right. Lisa, thank you so much for joining today. This is going to be just a terrific chat.
Well, I'm excited to be here. You're one of my faves.
So you'll well know that recruiting for me has to be one of the biggest misses today and a huge obstacle to companies transforming. I'm seeing it just as I watch the market. I see as I've interviewed a ton over the last 6 to 8 years. And I know you have strong opinions on this, which is why I want to talk to you. But what are maybe kind of your top things, your top 3 things that you see companies getting wrong in recruiting?
Well, we have a love affair right now with automation, and I wrote a piece a long time ago, like 5 years ago, I think, that was called "You Can't Uber Love," and you can't automate desire or attraction or interest, and you can't automate trust and credibility. And like all those things come into play in attracting talented people to accept your position. And I don't know, we treat people, we run them through a meat grinder of automation and AI and machine learning, and it's just insanity. And partly that's volume based because people are trying to scale, but you can't scale hiring either, because hiring occurs in the microcosm. It's an individual choosing to accept a job. And when we just treat it in aggregate, like we tend to do, we make a lot of misses. And that affects things like how many recs recruiters are working, because I see recruiters with 200 job orders they're trying to fill. And I'm like, you can't even keep those in your brain. That's insane. Sorry, that's a little bit. I've had a little bit too much coffee, or maybe not enough. I don't know. But
well, you know, it's funny because this mirrors, you know, what's going on in like marketing and sales as well, the love affair with automation. So I love that point. What are you seeing that sucks once you've got a candidate interacting with a recruitment team at a client? What are you seeing that you really don't appreciate?
You know, a really interesting thing that I've learned to hate this summer, more than I've ever hated it in the past, is the offloading of scheduling interviews to either links like Calendly or an entire department of people who all they do is schedule interviews, like travel agents or something. And that's all they do is schedule interviews, and there's zero opportunity to kind of check in with candidates. So, which is what I do. So I'm like, do your part with me, and I'll do the candidate part and make sure, but I'm up inside of their brains, like at every step, checking in on where they're at and what's going on. But companies resist that, and they just want to, again, it's tangential to the automation, right? Because it's all these forces pushing us to scale. But you can't do that effectively. You're losing opportunities to humanize this process and also get accurate information. And you're just treating things, I don't know, it's just bizarre. It drives really bad behavior, though, really dangerous to the process.
And your high touch, you know, and full disclosure, you and I have worked together. Talk about work from anywhere. I was in Amsterdam. You were in the middle of the country in Missouri. Talk to me about, because I know how much as a candidate I valued the high touch piece. What is that high touch piece that you provide? What is that? How does that help the process, both the candidate and the hiring company?
That's a great question. I think of the companies that hire me as being able to leverage my credibility. So I am their advocate, but every company has a little bit of maybe a few bumpy edges periodically, or, sharp edges, and I'm a bumper for that. And with the candidate, I'm also their advocate, and I also help them put their best foot forward. So during this process, I'm sensing what's going on both sides and trying to find a mutual win, because that's how you get, no one can be happy unless we get to what everyone's looking for and make sure it's there in this particular opportunity. So what I've learned over the 20 plus years I've been doing this is that that's a moving target. And this year, more than any other year, we're starting with crappy job descriptions, muddy understanding of what we want, because we're exhausted and our brains are tired. And also, business is more complicated than it's ever been. And so you're starting muddy. You've got to hip check and calibrate throughout the process. I mean, in a concrete way, this is, you can see this working out in discussions about compensation, right? Because we're in a period of rupture and compensation is shifting. We've got remote work, we've got on-site work, we've got some companies were determined to kill their employees the entire pandemic. Those are great companies for me to rescue people from. But then, it's all shifting and we're trying to figure out what people need to be paid, where, when, how. And if you're just running people through an assembly line, you miss all of the nuance and discussions. And I don't know. So that's part of the high touch, is just discernment. Does that make sense?
Which is critical. Absolutely. And it's critical right now when we look at what companies are facing with their own muck, even pre-COVID, just the whole need to transform, forgive me for using that word, but who you hire and how you retain them is so critically important. And so, yeah, I'm 100% with you that the automation piece is crazy. And that leads me to my next question for you, which is, with all the tech and all the automation, which was supposed to be magical, the AI, what I'm seeing in the market is, on LinkedIn and on Twitter, it's hiring managers who are advertising for positions, telling people to DM them. Like, is this what we want our hiring managers? Is this how we want them spending our time? Like, what is going on that's happening?
Well, I think there's a couple things happening. One, disintermediation, which, we began online social media, 10 years ago or more, is making its way everywhere, right? The middle people, we blasted those gates down. And so in a time when candidates are hard to find and recruiters are struggling, internal recruiters, external recruiters, to get candidates, of course, hiring managers are going to hang up their own shingle and go at recruiting. Those of us who do it for a living realize that you got to kiss a lot of frogs to get to that presentation. It's a waste of time I thought you were don't you have work to do? I think you've got work to do. This is interesting. But
I can't imagine trying to recruit for my own roles that I'm hiring for. Yet this is what it's come to.
It's a weird time. The market is strange. I have clients, big clients, tiny clients. All of them are like, what's happening? This is hard. Their recruiters are calling me and asking me to help them, like, teach us how to do this. Yep. And I'm like,
yep.
There's no magic. It's just aggressive networking and also leveraging credibility. That's why in 25 years, I've never sent a mass email. I just haven't. That isn't great. Probably I'd be more successful if I did it, but
I don't know.
I'm not on any spam lists. It's kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
I go too far that way often, because using some tools would be good. But I just specialize in that, actually listening to people and figuring out what they're looking for and then matching it up, which is at core what we should be doing. And all these other things can augment the process. But we're very bad listeners right now. We're so tired. We're not, and I see companies just sort of, an anecdote is, I got a job from one of my clients And it was a great role, fully remote, very senior, could be anywhere. And I presented a candidate and they're like, well, now we're not sure it's going to be remote. Maybe maybe we're going to need it in this city or this city. And I was like, you need to figure that out before you come
up front,
because this is key to who you want to talk to. And they're like, really? And I'm like, oh my God, is this how we're doing business?
Yeah.
And we are.
Yes.
We are.
Yep. Okay. So finally, we've had a good rant. So I think these issues that we've been having, I think COVID has exacerbated, but they've been, they've existed for quite some time. So when you look back at the past 5-6 years, give us a couple of things that you see your clients doing that are successful, that might be hard, but are successful. Give us some hints there so that other companies can try and emulate that.
If you surface a great candidate and you're interviewing them, and maybe they're not a perfect fit for a particular role. Maybe their comp requirements are off, a little more expensive, maybe a little less hands-on than you need, whatever. Apply this to any vertical, any niche. Take a pause and figure out where they might fit in your organization. And then try to do that. Try to, save yourself some time, because excellent people, once you activate them, you don't want to kick them in the teeth and then circle back 6 months later and say, oh, we need you. That's crazy. And that's the solution. But see, that requires the self-awareness to pause, to assess, and then to act, sometimes outside of a process that you've established.
Yeah.
And that, but if you did that, you will save your headaches like 1,000. The same thing though, earlier in the process, when you surface potential candidates, even before you've gotten them into the groove, do that same thing. Think about creatively where they might fit in the organization so you can hone your pitch effectively instead of, smacking them in the face. And then again, because great people are always in demand, you circle back after you've smacked them and you want to talk to them. It's weird.
And even if they're the right candidate, how we treat candidates through the interview process largely is just terrible.
Yes.
Terrible.
Oh, it's bad. It's a meat grinder. Yeah.
It is. And it's an indication, I think, of, I do think it's an indication of kind of what the company values. This whole work from anywhere, hybrid model, whatever, that's not an HR issue. That's a C-level board issue. If they said make work from anywhere work, HR would kind of figure that out. But anyway, I digress. So I do think about the companies that aren't human enough. To your point, that might be someone you want later. For the interviews that I've done as a tech CMO, I think about companies that have just been terrible, and I think I could be a potential customer. I could stay in touch with you. And I've had that with a couple of interviews where I've stayed in touch with the person I interviewed with, even though I didn't take the job or they didn't hire me. But because they were, most companies are just so not human and they don't realize how they're shooting themselves in the foot.
Nope. It's very short-sighted. It's in addition to our love affair with automation, we've become extremely transactional.
Yes.
And this, I think the saving grace in my career, and you know what? I do really well. I've got a good reputation. It's just that I treat people like human beings, and I care. Like we should care. I think there is a need in business to have an ethics of care and see how we're interconnected. I know this is crazy talk.
Good luck to you on that.
I know, but I do it in my tiny microcosm. Absolutely. And you know what? It pays dividends. And if we did it, if we scaled that, we'd be in better shape.
Well,
But
that's an amazing positive note, isn't it? Should we close it there? I
cool.
think, you're right. And this is why I have so enjoyed working with you and following you on Twitter, obviously, and becoming friends, is because I experienced that human side of the equation. And you can't quantify it. So Lisa, thank you so much for joining today and sharing your sassy opinions, and let's spread it far and wide so that more people can take that up.